Welcome to Monarchist Minute, not royalist news and discussion of the good old US of A. We have decided that we're going to put away our news commentator teleprompters, which we've totally been using the entire time, and our intellectual hats, if such thing exists. And we have decided to become the highest form of critic in American society, movie critics. So we're going to be talking about movies that are somewhat tangentially related to monarchism, even if the people intended it not to be a commentary on monarchism at all. Now, given that our most prominent guest star is called Darth Kill Who, and you can obviously understand why we're going to be talking about Star Wars, even if I didn't put two and two together until I started speaking the sentence. So, Darth, what's your analysis of the Emperor?
My analysis of the Emperor is he is the Nietzschean Übermensch ruling over the Untermensch. In just quoting some Nietzsche there, while paraphrasing Nietzsche. That's essentially what the Sith are. So I think that's why a lot of people that watch Star Wars are like unintentionally attracted to the Sith, even if they're supposed to be the baddies, because they are quite interesting and quite unique in terms of sci-fi. But I do think the Emperor is pretty based. He dissolved parliamentary democracy, which is cringe. He absorbed all emergency powers into his regime, which is a based thing to do. And he dissolved a godless republic and put in a galactic empire with himself as emperor. So kind of based.
Luke,
Yeah.
I am your father.
Stop spoiling it. There might be
Hey,
some people who haven't seen it yet.
It's about 50 years old, Charles.
It can't be 50 years
hey,
old.
if it's older than us, then it's not a spoiler.
Hold
Um,
on. How old is the Empire? How old is Empire Strikes Back, anyways?
oh, Jesus, I think it was 5 years after the first Star Wars was released, and I think the first one was released in '73,
No. So Episode 4
'78.
came out in 77. Empire Strikes Back came out in
Well,
80, so
still,
it's only
no, no.
42 years old.
Oh, okay. I'm way off on my dates then. I
So same
don't
difference.
rely on me on dates.
So yeah. Well, um, let's see. Dissolving the parliament. Actually, isn't that how we got introduced to the emperor as a concept? That the cringe officer in the Death Star was like, but what is the Imperial Senate going to say about this? And then Tarkin comes in and says the Imperial Senate is no longer a concern. The emperor has, done away with the Senate.
Dissolve the Senate.
The last vestiges of the old republic are no more. It's like, you know, I mean, I don't think Lucas is a monarchist, but if he was, I mean, if he is,
Mm,
I guess he's
well,
still alive.
it's funny because he portrays the monarchists in Star Wars as the bad guys, but then he has a princess be a main character, but she's pro-Republican. What?
I guess. I mean, the weird. I mean, that's the weird thing, huh?
It's like the cognitive dissonance here is just so
It's genuine.
tragic
Well,
with George Lucas. It's almost as if he decided to take inspiration from a lady that probably wasn't even born yet, named Meghan Markle.
no. Oh wow, that's kind of a burn. But no, I mean, isn't there this weird thing with was it the UAE where they have princes or whatever ruling some of like I guess their province equivalents, but it's still a republic on the national level.
No, no,
Uh,
it's an elective monarchy, and they elect from one of the yeah
And thank you,
but
Joe,
they
for
it, it,
saying that
it, it,
Princess
it,
Leia is a princess to a planet.
well, yeah, but I mean, still, I mean that's kind of what I was getting at. That she is a
um,
princess to a planet but that planet, even though it's kind of a monarchy, which doesn't make sense because her adopted dad was a senator.
Well, no, that's because he was a junior. Well, the Organas were like the royal family, so.
Oh, well, so they pulled double time as representing their being the royal family and representing him in the Imperial Senate. It's almost like Princess Amidala uh, was being lazy when she ditched her noble title and then went to work at the
Yeah.
Coruscant.
Yeah, it's also another form of cognitive dissonance because he makes Naboo an elective monarchy, but the elective monarchy doesn't rule for life.
Yeah, how? Then how is it a monarchy? They just have the aesthetics.
Well, remember George Lucas was, I guess, right. I get this is a very recent story, so there really isn't a modern example of a monarch actually doing anything that George Lucas could have drawn upon for his characters, but
Well, you know what? I think
and the title of Naboo Monarch lasts for just 2 years.
which makes no sense whatsoever. Let's see. So, um, all this will factor in when we give the franchise, the entirety of the Star Wars franchise, a um a rating. Because I forgot to mention that was something we should do because I only just remembered now. I didn't bring it up.
Okay.
But in the meantime, since we temporarily lost Darth, communications disruption can mean only one thing: invasion. Uh, do you want to mind inviting one of our good friends up?
I think that we can just wing it for now, and Darth
Oh,
can. Uh,
oh,
we can just wing it for now. So the
well,
rating I would give to Star Wars is an incomplete because I have not watched any Star Wars.
what?
So I don't.
How
Yeah, I
dare
have not.
you? To quote that Swedish environmentalist who thought we all be dead in 5 years. How dare you? Okay. Okay, here's what you need to do. You need to go down to your local Goodwill or garage sale or whatever. We're getting to the spring summer months, so I'm sure you're bound to have those. Find VHS tapes of the original three films, 4, 5, and 6. Don't ask me why George Lucas did that. I don't know. Anyways, um, hop them into the VCR and watch them, and then don't watch anything else
There's a
because
little bit of a problem. There's a little bit of a problem with that. And that bit of a problem is that I don't have a VCR anymore.
I'm sure your local. I'm sure your local garage sale will also solve that problem. I think at least my Goodwill or whatever it's called, or Salvation Army or whatever, stopped supplying VCRs.
There's no guarantee that a VCR will plug into my TV at all.
It most TV. I still think most TVs being produced still have regular RCA jacks, or at least S video, or maybe even S video. But I don't know. As long as it has
Well,
the white and yellow or red and yellow, you should be good. But better if it has the red, white, and yellow jacks on the side of your television. But we are straying too far away from our movie reviews, so I guess I will
yes,
have to give.
let us go to a movie that is
Well,
near and dear to
I
my
still have to give it a
personal.
rating. Well, I still have to give it a
Oh,
rating.
oh, yeah,
But
you.
but now that
Okay, give Star Wars your rating, and then we will go to the movie that's near and dear to my heart.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'm gonna be stealing Joe's because it's kind of funny. I'll give it an order 66 out of 500 at first. Um, And if you don't understand those references after you already watched 4, 5, and 6, like I told you to, there's a reason for that, and I won't bore you with the prequel trilogy and the absurdity that
you
that
very,
was.
thank you very much for telling me about Execute Order 66. And
Oh, you
now,
understand that much, and yet you still haven't watched the space western that was Episode 4, and the other 2 movies, but the 6th one was kind of. But anyways,
all right, let's flip it over from da, 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 da,
they're going to
to,
copyright strike us.
and yes, You'll Be My Heart is a Tarzan song. Thank you for that, Joe. We'll get to Tarzan in a minute.
There aren't any monarchist themes in Tarzan.
Really?
Well, I mean, uh, yeah, and there's, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I remember. I don't know if I watched Tarzan all the way through at one point, but I don't remember any kings or whatnot. I mean, it's Victorian England,
Well, yes. So, like you said, tangentially related.
so I guess tangentially, but yeah. So let's see.
I believe the original Tarzan movie was. I believe it's either on Paramount Plus or HBO Max. I forget which.
Well, the original would be with Disney Plus, wouldn't it? Because it's a Disney property, and I'm sure by this point all the Disney licensing agreements have expired for their streaming services, and they can get everything onto their streaming service. Let's see.
All right, let's see. What else? What about the very, very obvious one? Snow White.
Um, well, Snow White. Snow White is an excellent example of what happens when you have people who let's see, don't respect the class structure, and so you have uh basically peasants not finding suitable accommodations for a member of the noble class, and you have essentially a evil crazy woman who isn't being brought up by the Inquisition for being an evil crazy woman. So this is example of how not to run your medieval monarchy.
Absolutely correct. And as we know, a royal princess, although I don't know if Snow White is actually a princess, I forget, but I know
I
she
mean,
marries
she
Prince.
marries.
Yes, she marries Prince Charming, so yeah. So the wife of a prince getting help from 7 dwarves. Very, very on brand for how a monarchy should be run, ladies and gentlemen.
I mean, I mean, at the very least, the dwarves represent a good work ethic in that they go to work every day, even though they appear to have no customer base to support their mining operations. So I don't know. It's been years since I saw that movie. The only thing that's really truly sticking in my mind, the only line is thirsty. Have a drink with the dead skeleton. Because Disney movies did not they did not play, man. They used to let kids know it was okay to be scared, or at the very least they were gonna make you scared.
And of course, we could probably talk about we could probably talk about Elsa, whatever the heck that is.
Oh well, but we gotta give her ratings to Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Oh, of course.
7 out of
I
7.
will. You'll give it a 7?
Out of
Okay.
well, yeah,
Out of
but
10.
only on the minor scale.
The minor scale.
Yeah,
Okay. I will
you don't
give.
get the joke.
I will give it a 5. It's not perfect, but it gets the job done.
Very
Now,
beautifully. Well, actually, one thing we should bring up before, and all, even though this has nothing to do with the monarchism and not the satire thing, but I thought it was kind of interesting. It was the first full-length animated movie, so that alone is an impressive achievement, because before that all animations were shorts. So it is it is an impressive achievement for that. And also did win 7 little mini Oscars with the big Oscar one, I think. So that was kind of cool.
and now we will move from a magical place of a monarchy and a poor example of a fake monarchy to under the sea, under the sea,
As
under
once again,
the
copyright
sea.
strike. Once again, copyright strike. You don't understand the content matching bots. It doesn't matter if you're a really good singer or a really bad singer. The content ID bots will get you, and I don't want to have to deal with this. Okay. Well,
I've never heard of an example of somebody singing a song getting a content strike, but
well,
uh,
I mean, it's probably not going to get us in trouble, but you never know these days. And also, yeah. Well, let's see. How is the little enlighten us? How exactly is the Little Mermaid a bad monarchy? How is
well,
what's her
well, I honestly don't think that it's a bad monarchy at all. The Little Mermaid, I think Ariel's a princess, so technically it counts.
use? I mean, yeah, no, I mean, but you mentioned that it was a bad that what's his face? The dad is it they call him Poseidon or Neptune?
I have no, I forget.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's one of the movies that my older sister had on tape, but maybe I watched it once, but I was more inclined with The Emperor's New Groove and stuff like that.
Ah,
Frightened, right?
that's the next movie we can talk about.
Yes. But anyways, But you mentioned that the Emperor's New Groove was not the Emperor's New Groove. The There are some bad examples in the Little Mermaid. So please enlighten us.
Oh, there is, well, of course, apparently mermaids exist.
Well, yeah, but that's sort of like saying, dwarves exist. It's you're
Ah,
supposed
of
to
course.
suspend your disbelief a little bit.
Right, right, of course.
We're not. Well, in all seriousness, apparently, like elves and fairies might exist because there's a lot of that in Catholic folklore. But I don't think I've ever heard of mermaids in Catholic folklore. So, I don't know. This is just something you gotta suspend your disbelief on, like
Of course. Like
talking snowmen.
you have to suspend your disbelief that magic is you have to suspend your disbelief about magic in Harry Potter if you're watching that.
Or you can just not watch Harry Potter and stick to
All
like.
right, let's
Now that I've insulted the franchise, I never actually watched or read all the way through.
I think that we've got the Potterheads on full blast today with your comments. Uh, I don't know. They might send us a strongly worded letter. Uh, let us move on to rating the Emperor's New Groove
Well, we gotta
and
rate this
talking
movie
about that.
first.
Ah, The Little Mermaid. Because it's such a girly movie, I'll give it a 2.
I'll give it a 3, I guess. From what music I do remember, which is essentially just Under the Sea. It was yeah. That
All right, let's move on to your preferred movie from the time period, The
well,
Emperor's New Groove.
I never said it was my preferred one, but it's just the one we watch most often.
Right.
Well, let's see. Let's try to examine the monarchy here in the Emperor's New Groove. Okay, so you have the Emperor who is very immature. Clearly, he was never brought up with any semblance of how to properly run a state. And then you have the Emperor's advisor, Yzma. And this, I should say, as a movie, this is one that a lot of people like just don't like for some reason, and I don't know why. But anyways, so you have the Emperor's advisor, and she admits that I practically raised him when she's getting upset that she got spoilers, by the way, that she got fired. So you're complaining that he's a spoiled little, brat when you're the one who raised him. So isn't that your fault, Yzma? And then let's see. So but let's see, the relationship between the peasant and the noble, I mean, kind of understandable in some aspects. It's not the ideal thing, given that yes, the noble should be realistically giving orders, and the peasant should only be advising, ideally, unless of course this is. But yeah, uh,
Oh, we have
so
plenty of examples in modern day. Meghan Markle.
well, yeah, well, let's see. Things aside, I let's see. What other monarchist related discussions can be had with the Emperor's New Groove? He turns out to be a much more temperamental and kind ruler in the end. Uh, but of course, this is before the Spanish roll up. So it's not gonna it's not gonna stay that idyllic for long. And at least from what I so yeah, that's fun. But of course, the Spanish will make everything all right. And I'll give it Kronk out of 10. What do you have to
Oh,
say about it?
I will agree with you. Kronk out of 10.
He was
And
the best
now
part of the
we,
movie.
yes, and now we will go from an emperor to a man that can show you the world on a magic carpet ride.
Oh
Aladdin.
well. Um. Let's see. What is there to say about Aladdin? It takes inspiration from the 1001 Arabian Nights. There were never 1001 Arabian night stories. That the title was a lie. Um, but but I guess in some aspects with the genie or whatever. But the genie of the 1001 Arabian Nights is not nice. He's not like shoot, who played the genie in Aladdin? The really
The The Rock?
no, The Rock. The
I don't know.
Rock wasn't
I just threw a
acting
name
then.
out there. I don't know.
Uh,
I don't remember. I was a little kid.
Robin Williams. Robin Williams. There
Right,
we go.
Robin Williams,
Rob-
aka the best actor in the history of television and film.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm sure Alec Baldwin might disagree. Nah, Alec Baldwin. Shoot, who did all the Looney Tunes voices? Dang it, I can't remember anyone's. I've never been good at remembering people's names, for actors or whatnot. It's like
Yeah.
it's always that guy from
Good.
that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always been that guy from that
Good
thing.
morning, Vietnam.
Uh, oh, I thought you were saying "dur." No, so Uh, yeah. So Aladdin, the genie from Aladdin was, or I mean, from the 1001 Arabian Nights, at least one of the stories. Essentially, he was cast into the sea for doing something, and then uh, after being stuck in there for so long, he eventually decides whoever releases me, I'm just gonna straight up kill because he's so angry at not being, picked up out of the sea for 1,000 years. And then of course he gets ensnared by the genie by the guy who fishes him out, tells him a story or whatever, and then he manages to trap the genie and yeet him back into the sea. But Robin Williams is fortunately a much more kind and blue genie. Yeah, but in terms of the monarchist aspect, the Sultan is very easily brought under the influence of crazy evil guy who is trouble because he dresses in all black when and I guess dark red, in the hot Arabian sun. So why one would do that, I don't know. So obviously that's bad. The daughter shows no noble ambitions whatsoever, and she wants to marry a peasant who hasn't been ennobled. So like, kind of cringe on all. Uh, so kind of cringe.
All
But
right, so
but there was a Mulan cameo, and I guess we can get to that some later. But yeah, well, not necessarily Mulan cameo. Maybe they just use the same set piece. But yeah. See, what do you think of it?
I thought that Aladdin was a very poor movie. Well, of course, the last time I watched it, I was a little kid, so let's color it with that. But when I watched it as a little kid, I thought, this is cool. I like the upbeat music. So
S-
I'm
Uh,
going to I'm going to give it a 4 magic carpet rides out of 10, looking back on it now.
I'll I'll give it I'll say I don't want to completely steal Joe's content thing, but I'll give it one magic lamp in a pile of gold in a cave somewhere.
Right. So
Or
let us move on from I can show you the world on my magic carpet ride to let to let's see.
Mulan.
Beauty and the Beast.
Um. Okay. Well, for a full explanation of this movie, you have to go to John Doyle's YouTube channel, who I don't know personally, but just look it up unless YouTube's banned him or whatever. And search for the video title something like "The Beauty and the Beast is implicitly right wing." Now that will give you a better explanation than we'll be able to give you. And so I won't dwell on neo-Gastonism too much. So we'll just focus on the fact that that like one of our Joe commented, it's Stockholm Syndrome the movie, which I mean, yeah. Let's see, but yeah. I'll link to the John Doyle thing in the description if I remember to do it, but it's not for the uh.
Sorry, I had something to attend to all of a sudden there.
Oh, okay.
We
Well,
have moved on.
we're talking about Beauty and the Beast. Now.
Oh,
If
so
you would like
Stockholm
to.
Syndrome, the movie?
There we go. Two people said it. We have
All
Joe
right,
who
and by the way, Charles, if you can give Darth a list of the movies we have already run through, so Darth can add his own thoughts.
Snow White.
Snow White. I really don't have anything on Snow White.
There's no winter in it, or is it?
Yeah, I don't think there's winter in there, unless you count the witch's bleak land as a form of winter and death. Then I guess, and that could be sort of symbolism because winter is oftentimes is associated with death and spring is associated with rebirth.
Hmm. Uh, The Emperor's New Groove.
The Emperor's New Groove. It's been a while. I think I only watched it like once as a kid. So I would have to give it a rewatch as an adult to actually make a judgment on it, but it is the rightful monarch reclaiming his throne, so based.
Okay. And then
Aladdin.
Aladdin.
Um oh, what opinion do I have of Aladdin? I view it as a lowly peasant pushing his way into the imperial court where he doesn't belong.
Mm. And also the fact that the Sultan is completely easily susceptible to a guy in black who he really should have put two and two together a while ago as the evil one, because who dresses in black in the desert?
Oh, and by the way, we
I mean
talked about the Little Mermaid.
Oh yeah,
the Little Mermaid, I mean,
tasty.
I guess a princess going out to go find her husband, even if they're of two different species. Based on the princess for trying to find an appropriate prince.
To marry. Um, let's see. So back to Beauty and the Beast, and I don't know if you watched John Doyle's video on Beauty and the Beast, but if you have,
I haven't watched. The only thing I've watched of John Doyle is Academic Agent's interview with him.
oh well, yeah, if you see, well, I'll not get it, so you won't know about the ideology of neo-Gastonisms, which we're not going to get into because I'll just link the video. But suffice it to say, uh, make sure. I mean, if you're the normal age of this channel, then yeah, it's fine. But there are certain things that or even though it's kind of a joke video, there are certain like heavy hitting things that you really shouldn't be watching if you're like actually like a little kid. Let's see. So what can we say about Beauty and the Beast? Huh. Uh, it is an example of how you have uh a noble who isn't being competent, and how he shows no effective leadership whatsoever. And so that's kind of cringe that he isn't doing that. But then you have a more aristocratic-minded peasant who is leading the charge, and this is sort of getting into the neo-Gassonism thing, but it's kind of necessary for the plot. Of him going out and and trying to protect his populace from the imminent danger that this beast thing presents. So
Um,
I'm a little unclear from a monarchist standpoint what I should make of this, but
I mean, my interpretation of the peasant taking up the role as a noble, I am actually if you can like get the spirit of being a noble, I can respect that more than a noble that abandons his role, and I've heavily despised that. If you're born into that class, and if you fail to meet the responsibilities of said class, honestly, you do deserve to be deposed, but not by like a democratic mob, but by another aristocrat who can actually fulfill that role and truly embody that spirit. It's kind of like how some people can be born of a different class.
and this is why historically people often think that it's just if you were a peasant you were a peasant, and if you were that, then that's it, and that's all that happened. But it wasn't uncommon, at least from my understanding, that that peasants who proved their ability were actually ennobled by other nobles, because that's how this worked. um let's see. What are your thoughts on the movie, Vic?
All right. So what are my thought is that the Beast was ugly, and it was a very well done movie, but I will say that somebody taking initiative and demonstrating the qualities of a noble is actually quite refreshing, especially in the world in which we live. We will return to that world, I suppose, next week.
I guess before we give it a rating, uh, Monarchist of America has no official stance on Gaston, but if I ever do become if for whatever reason I find myself in power, if everyone else just like I don't know something, then Monarchist of the first part of Monarchist of America's platform will read that Gaston was the hero of that movie.
All right.
Well, so
So
ratings. What's your rating, Vic?
I am going to give it a very solid 10 dozen eggs out of 12 dozen eggs.
And I'll give it a semi-automatic musket out of 10 because that was also a thing that happened in the movie for some reason. I don't
Okay.
I mean when you're just that cool, when you're just that cool, your single shot flintlock musket suddenly becomes a semi-automatic rifle. That's just how this works, guys. Although, in all honesty, maybe that's why people don't understand how firearms works if their perception of that comes from Disney movies. But anyways,
The timeless classic, The Princess and the Frog.
oh, you mean the one that Disney did back in what was it, 2012? And it was a 2D animated film, and it was really, and it was actually kind of good, but because everyone hates 2D films for some reason, it flopped. Well, not flopped, but it didn't do as well as a 3D film would have. That one.
Absolutely.
All right.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I have things coming up, like people asking me for help around my place, and it's like, literally they walked in, like, oh yeah, I'm obviously on a voice chat. Nah, can you help me go with something?
Hmm. Well, hope before they steal you away again, was make sure you get first priority
Fuck
of
the
cracking
Princess
at
and
the
the Frog.
Yeah, yeah.
Princess and the Frog, like
The 2012 Disney 2D animated movie that was okay, but it failed. But it failed in comparison if it was a 3D animated movie because people hate 2D animated movies for some reason.
um, I thought it was all right. Besides, I hate the bourgeois trying to imitate royalty, which was definitely going on in that movie.
Yeah,
Um,
but
uh,
I felt it was made up by somewhat in the fact that the bourgeois, very rich girl was kind of an annoying character, and you were only supposed to be sympathetic to her in the sense that she was the protagonist friend for some reason.
yeah, but still, I generally hate that trope because it's kind of like it's the American idea that like, oh, well, we're just going to democratize royalty. Anybody can marry into those upper strata when I agree with the taboo that it shouldn't honestly never happen because you're fundamentally coming from a different mindset, a different caste. Your DNA is even different between the castes. And that's why you have leadership traits between families passed on, and that's why you only married off your say if you're a noble, you marry your daughter off to another noble family because their children will carry those same noble traits. It's like there is a genetic factor to it that they had subconsciously back in the Middle Ages, and the fact that the bourgeois always try to push the envelope, always try to push themselves into the royal and noble domains, despite their place not being anywhere near that. It really disturbs me because that's a very American concept making its way into um, something that is very antithetical to American republicanism.
Mm. But peasants of ability who actually approve of themselves and aren't being pushy, I guess, they can be ennobled. But
It if they can truly like get beyond their own caste and come to a noble, come into the spirit of a noble, and if they earn that position, like yes, it was very common in the Middle Ages for someone of the peasantry, the non-landed class, to earn himself a fief because he is a competent warrior. He embodies those noble traits even if he's not part of the nobility. Um, I don't know. Some people like try to say that castes are just clubs, but honestly, in that case, it'd be kind of like a private club where it's if another member of that strata recognizes those noble traits in a man, it's not like a test. It's a do they see it in you? Can you are you of that strata? Um, and that's why like knights could knight other knights in certain orders, and like you could be of an equal rank and appoint somebody in certain circumstances to a noble title, which knights were also nobles, which some people don't understand that. They thought it was just a purely military position, but frankly, that's what nobility is. It's military rankings. Like Duke came from a Roman military governor title, essentially, and then became a high noble position.
Too much
Right.
learning. Victor, what's your thoughts on the movie? Because we're learning too much.
Oh, you're learning too
We're
much.
becoming we're becoming academics again, and we're trying to forge new identities as movie critics.
I'm sorry, I'm always an academic.
Well,
Can't
at the
break
very
that.
least, be an academic
well,
movie critic for at least for this
well, of
week.
course, of course, we're talking about Princess and Frog, so,
Yeah.
um, the princess having to kiss the frog in order to turn him back into a man.
I
It's a
mean,
bit,
Um, go ahead.
it's a bit tried. Um, I will give this movie a rating of 2 frogs out of 5 pots of boiling water.
uh, I mean, besides the witchcraft thing, which is kind of like you would really need some. I mean, like maybe if you balance that out by having like priest with exorcisms, but the closest they come near a church is like at the very end by the tower. Maybe they even step into it. One I can't remember, but if they had some priests balancing out, I would say it would be a suitable movie. To be like, hey, witchcraft not good, yeah, and portraying one of the witchcraft lady people as a supporter to the protagonist. I mean, that's kind of like no, but the outfits they were nice. I like because it was it was set in the 20s, so obviously they were all dressed nice, which you can't say today for any modern movie. If it was set in the contemporary era, they wouldn't be dressed so nice. The music, of course, is New Orleans, so obviously it's going to be swinging.
All
I don't
right,
know. I
and
like the sound in
speaking,
general, so I'll give it. Hold on, I gotta give a rating.
right,
I'll give it one small business owner out of 10 conglomerates.
all right, very good. And now we will
Well,
stick with Frank.
five. I don't know. These ratings have nothing to do with what I actually think of the movie. Now that I think about it, it's really a decent movie.
All right, let us swap over to the other side of francophone culture, and let's hop over to beautiful Paris, France, the Hunchback of Notre Dame.
I'll let
Uh,
you guys talk about that because actually, I don't think I've ever seen that all the way through.
You've
uh, I,
never seen it?
Okay,
I,
now
I,
you can
I,
do the "how dare you" thing with me.
I'm in the
How
same
dare
boat as
you?
Charles here, but I know the general plot. um,
A Democratic mob um harasses the our main protagonist in this movie. So very,
yes.
very low points for that.
Well,
Well,
actually, that's just an example of how democracy is intrinsically, not good, yo.
I just say it's the unwashed masses releasing their primitive anger that is very uninformed anger, and that's why the peasantry shouldn't be anywhere near leadership. That yeah.
Oh
Well,
boy. Look at
Well,
well, I would say look at contemporary stuff, but then again, we
yeah,
are not news anchors today.
yeah. We're
Well,
well. I actually I
just
do have this. Oh, sorry.
I just say the unwashed masses. There's a reason why ever since like Athens, every single philosopher has been like, no, democracy is awful. It must be destroyed, done away with forever. And we must have wise, we must have wise philosopher kings. It's much easier to have one person rule that is wise than have thousands of people that are wise to
It is
rule.
interesting that Aristotle and his sorry for cutting off, but Aristotle in his Politics said listed democracy as one of the three bad forms of governments.
Mm-hmm.
Although the translation kind of went back and forth, like well, maybe not back and forth, but between what was it, Plutarchy or not Plutarchy, polity. There we go. But yeah, so why everyone suddenly like democracy, I have no idea.
That's
But
because it's
Charles,
attractive to the
we
unwashed masses that think that they should have power. It's very deceptive to the peasant's mind. Um,
all right. Now we will move on and we will stay in Europe and we will get out of the Disney universe and move into the literary scene and discuss something that is very near and dear to my heart. Please, sir, may I have another?
what?
what?
You guys have never heard of Oliver Twist before?
No,
I've heard of
you
it,
also
but it's
kind of
one of
broke
those
up
books
there
I
too.
have to. It's one of those books I have to read.
Um,
Well,
yeah,
I
no,
will do the how dare you?
yeah. How dare us?
How
Um,
dare we? Look, there's like at least there's thousands of years of the Western tradition I have to get through, and you're accusing me for not reading Oliver Twist yet. I mean, this isn't like movies where there's only like over a century to go through.
yeah,
You know,
There's an Oliver Twist
I
movie,
also
so I can.
have.
There is an Oliver Twist movie, so I can still do it.
well, yeah, but how good is that movie?
I
So,
actually haven't. Oh, go ahead.
oh, I'm just saying, like, if you were to take a look at my bulging bookshelf of like, well, I only read like probably 1 out of 10 of those books, but I keep on buying more books that I need to read. Like, I have Nietzsche up there. I have personal memoirs from generals, monarchs, etc. Um, and other works. So, Oliver Twist would be literally probably one of the last ones I get to.
Yeah,
All right.
suffice it to say that when not quite as bad, I guess, but when I die, if you have an interest in in a bunch of historical books and Catholic books, uh, don't break into my place. But I guess that's where you can get them.
Yeah,
But please don't break into my abode.
you should
All
see my
right,
copy
and
of
let
the
us.
Soma Theologica. It is massive, and I intend upon reading it. But
Good
good,
luck.
yeah,
There's
Good
no such
luck.
thing
good
as
luck to
luck.
myself.
There's no such thing as luck. There's statistics and providence.
Yeah,
Okay,
well,
and let us move on now and go from Oliver Twist to one of the greatest stories ever told, featuring a character that I have played twice in school plays, one of which was that play, and the other was a mishmash of a whole bunch of famous characters from a whole bunch of novels. And we will take you to Mr. Ebenezer Scrooge, Tiny Tim, God bless us, everyone,
Wholesome.
and A Christmas Carol.
surprisingly a short read. I audiobooked it, but it was like still quite short.
Yeah, we kind of read through bits and pieces of it in English class near Christmas. And I really need to read through the whole thing. Fortunately, it's one of those books that is in the public domain, so you can get it free online without feeling any guilt. Although I do have it in a physical copy along with some of other Charles Dickens works. So yeah, it is but it is very wholesome. It has a very good message. Um, in fact, I don't. Let's see. But when the Muppets Christmas Carol is still by far the best rendition, but
Mine is with Patton Oswald. I believe that's his name. Believe it was like the 1980s Christmas Carol.
okay, but consider this. Somehow, even the lighthearted Muppets made a creepy. Well, not to say creepy, but they gave a really good attempt at making the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come like creepy, and somehow they succeeded. I guess maybe for children. I don't think I was ever actually really scared of it, of the portrayal. But still, you gotta give the Muppets credit for that. But in the book has this very good message. It's the Ghost of Christmas Present, who this was completely omitted from the spoilers, by the way, obviously, but this was omitted from the Muppets version because it doesn't fit with the lighthearted atmosphere. But he shows these two children that are all emaciated. It's like, this is ignorance and this is want, and beware them both in all their degree. But especially beware, was it ignorance? Because ignorance of societal problems will just be like doom. And he points to London, and it's like, yeah, that's hitting kind of home right now. I mean, like, I know Charles Dickens was specifically writing about the plight of like the poor in the rapidly industrializing London, but like, yeah, that sort of hits home.
I mean, like there's Victorian England. The countryside was fine if you're living in England, but if you're living in the cities, like what you see, Scrooge's assistant, what's his name again?
Bob Cratchit.
Yeah, Cratchit's family was
Yes.
like honestly like 90% of Londoners because they were all either factory workers or some sort of menial job that honestly didn't pay enough. Like honestly, I say it was kind of like what the United States is going into now, where wages did not conflate with the rise of the money supply in the economy. So a lot of people they had the same wages that they were making decades before, but their money was worth less just because of mass industrialization. And that's what led to Karl Marx being so popular in especially continental Europe and somewhat popular in the upper intelligentsia in London at that time. It's because remember Karl Marx was writing in the same time frame that Charles Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol. Like they
1840s, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was in that time period. In fact, Abraham Lincoln even even admired the Communist Manifesto. Like he wrote a letter to Karl Marx, like critiquing certain points on it, but praising him on others. So
Take
yeah,
that as you will.
yeah, Lincoln. Not as pure as Americans like him to be, but honestly, that's why I like the 1984 A Christmas Carol with George C. Scott. I was saying Patton Oswalt, but I was completely off on actors. Because it does portray the grittiness and the dirt and grime of Victorian London. Uh, that really most of the other versions kind of omit a lot.
It's almost like those other versions want to send a particular message.
I mean, maybe Shoot. Maybe they.
Let's do ratings for this. Let's just go to ratings.
Um. 2
Um,
home invasions out of 10.
Oh.
No, it's a really good book, but only 2 of the. Well, actually, no. Marley did a home invasion. The Ghost of Christmas Present did a home invasion, and the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, or no, the Ghost of Christmas Past and the Ghost of Christmas Present did home invasions. So that's 3 home invasions. The Ghost of Christmas Future did not do a home invasion, if I remember correctly. So 3 home invasions out of 5.
well, I
It's a
mean,
really good book.
if his character Scrooge was back in his house towards the end, so maybe the ghost of future,
Christmas Yet to Come.
yeah, Christmas Yet to Come, dropped him off there, so potentially another home invasion.
Well, actually, there was this train, not train thing. There was this little you know how you have those light up houses that sometimes have lights and whatever inside. Well, there was this one that had Scrooge and then all 3 of the ghosts going around at once. And one of my dad's coworkers or whatever, because I was helping set it up, is like, "Yeah, this is the 5-minute version where they all show up and he has a heart attack."
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah,
moving on from.
Well, wait,
Oh,
did
I
you
have to
give it
give
a
it a
your
rating.
rating? And yeah, did Darth give it a rating? Yeah, did you
I
two give it
mean,
ratings?
I'm just gonna give a traditional rating. For the actual book, well, more like a novella, it's pretty short. I would say I give it a 8 out of 10. The only reason why I give it an 8 out of 10, not a 10 out of 10, is because, frankly, the Victorian English is not my forte in reading. It's okay to listen. It's actually a lot better to listen to than to actually physically read. I would say, especially if you're grow up in contemporary America. In terms of the films, I have various ratings for every different film, but I would say the 1984 one's my favorite. That I would give a 9 out of 10 to.
Literally 84.
Yeah,
What about the
Right,
Muppets one?
I purposely did
Charles.
not watch that one.
All right, let me give my rating. I am going to give a rating. I'll just give it a 10 because of my personal attachment to it. All right, moving on from the Ghost of Christmas in Ascension Tide, we will move on from that, and we will now discuss the famous tale that Darth Kilhoun will probably know by heart, Hansel and Gretel.
Um, I mean, teaches a good lesson and to obey your parents. That's always a good thing.
Wasn't
The
wasn't the original Hansel and Gretel the parents were hungry, so they led their kids out into the woods to have them,
uh
starve? Or was that a different version?
um no, they never did that because then that would the Germans were very particular in their stories giving very explicit lessons for children. So I I don't think they would go with that narrative. But the fact that Hansel and Gretel, they were told not to go into a certain portion of the forest, because the parents knew it was dangerous if they ventured out too far and were unable to make it home in time. And certain parts of the Black Forest too, this was in it'd be in the Baden area, Baden, and also Oslo Serene area, just kind of that general area of what is Germany and France was called the Black Forest because it was a very, very dense, very rich soiled area that produced a massive forest that pretty much blocked out the sun in certain places because it was hard to see through. Which also gave inspiration for the Hundred Acre Woods in Winnie the Pooh. Um, but it was
Winnie
a
the
place.
Oh.
But yeah, it was a mysterious place for the Germans because they were also the Germans that were very in tune with nature. So mysticism was very close to their hearts at all times. That's why it'd be like the Witch in the Woods, various other beasts and the trolls under the bridge and stuff. All these things came out of like that general area in Germany. So Hansel and Gretel, of course, they disobey their parents, thinking that they can outfox them and like, oh, we'll just leave a bread trail, back to our house, and we'll just follow back and we'll just explore the woods, and completely forgetting that there's animals living in the forest, and oh, these humans are leaving free food. Great, let's snubble that up, and then of course they get lost, and they eventually come upon the witch's house when they're mostly starving, like near death. And then they break it, like they also perpetuate another crime, which is break into a stranger's house and begin to
The
devour.
establishment.
Yeah, literally the establishment, but it's a pseudonym for just breaking and entering and stealing a person's food, which is extremely taboo.
Oh,
Because everything's based upon trust within the community, especially back then. And if your kids
okay,
violate that
guys.
trust,
Not to cut you guys off, but I'm probably gonna have to go. There is a lot of thunder happening where I am right now, so I'm going to have to sign off. So take care, guys.
yep,
All right.
take care.
To preserve
Um,
the three cast, I
yeah,
don't know. I'll let you
let's.
just keep talking.
So just to finish up, I mean, like it's still a lot of the story left, but when the witch comes, she essentially seduces them by acting, well, like an old grandmother, but in reality, like she intends on sacrificing them to Baal, or is it Moloch? No, it's Moloch. Because child sacrifice is Moloch. Um, which that's also like another thing that's kind of omitted from a lot of the retellings of Hansel and Gretel is the witch's like intent upon sacrificing them and devouring their flesh is a sacrifice to Moloch, which is what witches did primarily, was child sacrifice, and that's why they produced abortion medication back in the days. That's like the trope of the witch's brew. That's a abortion medication to sell to unfaithful wives. To get rid of unwanted pregnancies, typically from affairs, which would be an indirect sacrifice to Moloch. Um,
Uh,
so
oh,
she captures them, of course, intending on fatting them up for her own pleasure because she's not going to sacrifice them until until they're in the right state that she has a lot of meat for a while. Um, uh, Yeah, and that's why she puts him in a cage and like continuously feeds him so that way he's being sedentary, not moving a lot, so he's not burning a whole lot of calories, and so he's just continuously gaining weight. Um which does happen a bit to Hans, but there's other bones from other children in there, so he keeps on, and she wants to check his fingers because a finger is a good way at actually like telling how much fat somebody has. Like an old man with a lot of fat on his bones will have thick sausage fingers, while a skinny child will have, of course, skinny fingers. So he would poke out a bone um uh to the witch to feel, thinking that it's his finger, and getting frustrated that he's not gaining any weight. Eventually she would release him. I forget under the reasons why, but essentially they trick the witch into releasing him, and they kill the witch by throwing her into the fire, I believe. If I'm
I,
remembering the story right.
I think I am trying to extrapolate from what I know from one of the verses I've heard. So I think they were going to cook Gretel was the girl, right? Cook Gretel first,
Yep.
and then while she had the cage open to get Gretel, Hansel saw the opportunity and then just like pushed her into the. Of course, this really couldn't be the original story because I think pushed her into the oven, which I don't think they were making ovens big enough for people back then. But well, adults anyways. So, yeah. But anyways, the moral of the story: don't disobey your parents. Uh,
A-
but
And don't trust strangers.
yeah,
And also be um uh um beware the witch, abhor her, cast her into the fire.
Yeah. Germany didn't have the Inquisition in the same way Spain did, or like Italy
Well,
did it.
the thing about like the Inquisition was like technically even today the Catholic Church does have the Roman Inquisition to this day. It still exists, but they investigate internal church matters. Um, uh, in Spain, essentially, it was the Inquisition was just given license by the crown to operate and gave them more funding and numbers. In Germany, which at that time was the Holy Roman Empire, it was extremely decentralized. Um, by that, they're essentially every single township would act as like their own type of inquisition. Like they would enforce church law, but there wouldn't be like an official inquisition. It would just be they're acting like the Inquisition in that case because it was up to local temporal authority to enforce God's law.
It was a happier time.
Always, I love medieval Germany, especially it's like one of my favorite. If I had to pick another time period to live in, I pick there.
Yeah. I don't know. Any time when the church and state, the state acknowledged the church and her proper role in society would have been a happier time to live in. But once again, we're becoming too academic, and we need to try to be haha funny. So let's see. What are Rumpelstiltskin.
Um, Rumpelstiltskin. I'm remembering the name of the story. Remind
He
me.
Okay, so let's see. I'm a little hazy on the details. You have the princess, and oh, wait, I forgot to give it ratings. I guess
Hu-
uh,
uh, Hansel and Gretel. I'm thinking about making a video because like I keep on like seeing fascists get thrown around. Like the other day, I saw like, oh, the Sith are fascist guys, and I'm like, no,
the fat
like
the Sith had a philosophy of national syndicalism with the philosophy of actualism.
yeah, and they believed in the deconstruction of social castes for a new national spirit. No, the Sith are very much into caste systems, guys. The Sith are like a combo of the warrior and priestly caste. Just saying. And and then they have the peasantry beneath them. Um and typically the peasantry are always better off in the Sith Empire than they are in the Republic, because the Sith actually like somewhat take care of their peasantry more than the Republic does, because the Republic will just let their peasantry starve because democracy. Um, uh, and the Sith will be like, no, we need to take a collective responsibility as an empire. Uh, minor
Well,
tangent. Also, the First Order is fascist. I think Joe is trying to say no, they're not. They're what you call a statocracy. Well, they're very statocratic. Which is where the where the military is the government. Like it's not a military junta is where the military takes over the civilian government, but the First Order didn't have a civilian government. They were statocracy where the military is the government. Officers do these functions as ministers and stuff, but they do it as a military, not as a civilian body. It's not officers taking over the positions of like prime minister and all that. Instead, the generals just are governing based upon military regulations because everything is based on the military. Um, and like there is the outlier of like Kylo Ren, but he does hold military rank in the First Order before he took over, and like the Supreme Leader. Yeah, I mean, like the Snoke guy. I mean, like yeah, you kind of say he was like a civilian leader, but I mean, he more just took over the generals and made them pledge allegiance, and that's what gave him ultimate power. And then after they were gone, like Kylo Ren was like his minor rule. It was still he had to he had to convene his council of generals essentially, and they were the ones actually running stuff. Like for the flaws of like the three sequel movies, I can at least make sense of some things. And there were, if they would have given some things more time to develop, they could have generally been better movies, and the First Order could have actually been like a genuine fleshed out faction. But they had the elements there, but they just didn't exploit it.
And instead, they're just slightly sleeker stormtroopers.
Yeah, I just I don't get that, like, that part. Like, if you're supposed to be like a quality over quantity military like the First Order is supposed to be, why don't you have multiple uniforms for your men? Like, oh, you're going to a desert planet. Why don't you have frac use? That's what we use in the army when they deploy to a place like Iraq or those places. Those uniforms, which is not the standard combat uniform, which is more meant for a European and American environment. Um, uh, but we have multiple uniforms for a reason. Why don't the stormtroopers? Come on,
um,
guys.
well, because that would necessitate breaking from the stormtrooper trend of the original trilogy, and we want to reinforce the fact that the First Order is basically just Empire 2.0, and we want to recycle everything about the Empire because people already have emotions about that. So we just want to recycle that, even though it's not really the same thing, guys. And also because we want all the uniforms to be the same, because that gives off the illusion that this First Order state is all about. It gives the impression that this First Order state is all about conformity, which it is, but like even
I mean,
like the Soviets, which were kind of about, conforming to the decrees of Stalin, still had different uniforms, but okay.
the thing about uniforms is like it's actually interesting seeing the formation of the Wehrmacht because when like there is a lot of socialist principles going into the design of their uniforms. Like that's why like you get like the iconic like Wehrmacht uniform, like you can distinctly tell that it's Wehrmacht, and like everybody has like the same design. That was a very the National Socialists like trying to create like a unified identity instead of having all these different regiments with different uniforms that the Reichswehr maintained from the era. Which the in the Imperial era they had a standard field dress, but they had different regimental service uniforms. The service uniform is the dress. Like when they were in garrison, every almost every regiment had a unique ish uniform. Most of them were pretty standardized by that time, but there would be a lot of regiments with like completely different uniforms because they were historical regiments. Um, uh, like there'd be the guards regiments, which were the ones that guarded the monarchs, but they were also sent off to the front. They typically had the more older traditional Prussian, Bavarian, Saxon, etc. uniforms to whichever kingdom their regiment came from. Hitler wanted to do away with that and create essentially a standard for all men because essentially he's operating on socialist principles there.
Yeah, which is kind of cringe because different uniforms that express where you come from sort of have intrinsic value of, I guess, reminding you where you come from, and also telling your enemies that, oh shoot, we're messing with X group. Might want to rethink that.
Yeah, that's why that's like one of the few gripes that I've developed over my time in the US military because we do very much the same thing where it's like a standard everybody has the same uniform just with different decorations on it for different things. And that's like the only thing that distinguishes you specifically as an individual. I'd much rather go back to regimental uniforms.
Yeah, but the current U.S. military, like, units don't typically come from the same place anymore, right? Like, it's
Well,
like,
yeah, it's not really like that anymore, which is sad, but I still think every regiment should have its own distinct uniform. Um, or at least a few regiments should have their own distinct uniforms. Which I know that does happen in the U.S. military, but it's extremely rare. Like the 3rd Infantry Regiment, aka the Old Guard, the one that guard Arlington. They also have a unit out in Fort Lewis for West Coast funerals, but they have a distinct regimental uniform, but it's still pretty close to the regular service uniform that everyone else wears. Yeah, go back to regimental uniforms, guys.
All right. What have what can we talk about, or are we good here?
I mean, we want to talk more about Star Wars.
Oh yeah,
I
there's always
I
more to
can.
talk about Star Wars.
There always is. Uh, Charles, have you ever played the Knights of the Old Republic series? I was just thinking about this.
Let's see. No, because one, maybe it's this or another game where I heard it has problems with Windows on Steam, and I'm too lazy to learn how to troubleshoot things. Uh,
That's the first KOTOR, which it's very easy. You turn on VSync on the graphics settings in the game, and then it doesn't crash.
oh well, okay. And then the
Oh,
second thing, didn't they have like some weird degenerate thing where your character can be gay or something?
no, they didn't have that in the Knights of the Old Republic. They did introduce that into Star Wars: The Old Republic, but only when the expansions came around. Like the original the original Star Wars: The Old Republic MMO did not have any same-sex dialogue options for flirting. You you could only do opposite heterosexual flirts. Um, uh, which was kind of based on the early developers, but then EA was like, "No, you must include the gay." uh,
Oh,
um, uh, but also like August Steiner is saying, yeah, Star Wars has has a lot of monarchies. You encounter one of the monarchies in Knights of the Republic 2, the Sith Lords game where you're on um it's on Onderon, not Alderaan. Alderaan is the planet that gets blown up, and says Onderon, which is another planet I know. Star Wars is genius with their naming conventions, guys. Um, uh, but on Onderon, there's this royal power struggle between the official queen, which she's unmarried. So okay. And her brother, which was like he's essentially like the field marshal of Onderon. Um, uh, and he wants to secede from the Republic because essentially they backstabbed Onderon during the Mandalorian Wars, and he had to fight the entire war essentially on their own. Well, then the Queen of Onderon's like a Republic shill, essentially. uh,
yeah. One thing that I've noticed in Star Wars, or not, and like sci-fi, like sci-fi in general. Although really those there are only like two other sci-fi series that I've actually gotten someone into. Both kind of had their problems. First, the Stainless Steel Rat series, which its main problem is the author is like atheism or whatever, but then he sort of seems to whatever. Anyways,
a new atheist type.
well, I mean, he only mentions it casually. In this universe, apparently they claim to prove that there's no life after death or whatever, and it was sort of made in an offhanded way, is that the character's like explaining why he doesn't want to kill people, which is kind of understandable, but then and then in the prequel books, which I'm not sure if they're in the same canon, it seems religion. Well, no, in another book in the same main series, I think it's even in the same book. It's like the guys, like the people ask when on this planet he's infiltrating, if the picture he wants to take in is a religious picture. So apparently, the society is somehow scientifically claims to have proven that there's no life after death, and yet religion's still whatever. Anyways, so yeah, that's one series, and then the others, which is more of a I guess book comedy thing. I guess it's not. I mean, it's one of those things where there's a lot of comedic relief, even though it's not a full on comedy, I guess. And then there's I don't even know what you call it, but it was written by this author, a female Marine of all things, called Elizabeth, whose name was Elizabeth Moon, and its biggest problem is for some reason half the military in the space universe consists of women, as if women were as if any society is just going to naturally have half of the military be made up of women.
I mean, unless you're Israel, but okay.
Yeah.
Which,
Well,
which that's because Israel does mandatory conscription, but even then, the women don't stay on as contract soldiers after their initial conscription for the most part. So it's like still like the men outnumber the women because the men typically will sign another contract after their initial how much time their conscription is. Also, Gamer Confucius, do you want to come up and talk because you say you're an inspiring writer?
uh,
Might want to offer him.
you know what? I'm in control of the podcast. I
Yeah,
guess we
yeah,
can
I know
invite
you
him up if he
control it.
wants, and also I know Joe has opinions on Star Wars probably, so hopefully we won't cause any conflict, right? Anyways, but let's see. My point being, within those two books, there was a period where galactic society fell apart, and it's interesting that Star Wars, if at least from my understanding, never had that.
Hmm.
Uh,
Um,
maybe it
I
did, but
I don't know. Star Wars is weird with like the religion question. Like half the time they go like new atheist and like or religion is cringe, but then it's like they go into like no, religion is actually like based in other stories. It really depends on the author. And
well, I mean, at the very least, in the Star Wars canon, there's a spiritual
Force
element.
energy.
Oh, Gamer
It's
Confucius, are you okay?
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt your conversation. I'm basically going outside because inside my house there are people sleeping. You can
Okay.
continue your conversation.
Okay.
um
Uh,
so I just wanted to ask like you say in the text that you plans on writing having monarchies and having them be based in your stories.
Yes.
So what's the basic conception of your sci-fi story then?
I don't want to oversell it. I want to be very humble about this. Basically, the base concept is that humans using different ships settle different planets. So there's basically each planet is functionally its own country.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Um, yeah, I think that's actually something that's coming into the Discord more and more as people talk about, well, if we settle places, how are we going to govern it? And essentially Elon Musk is like, well, we'll govern ourselves eventually. And I think he's making subtle nudges that he'd be like the de facto king of like Mars if he settled it. Um, which is a concept of like a lot of reactionaries are like actually discussing this. Like if we explore space, essentially all the reactionaries need to leave Earth and form our own kingdoms on other worlds.
of course, that does lead to the
Uh,
interesting discussion. Uh, and this is something that I don't know. This probably isn't brought up as much, but because Mars has a different year and a different day than Earth, uh what happens with the liturgical year? Like, do we just like try to cram the regular liturgical year into the Martian year, or I guess stretch it out because Mars has 400 some odd days year, right?
well,
And then or do we create a separate Martian rite with its own liturgical calendar? But even then it
I,
would still have to,
personally,
I,
I think is kind of like you have to line up the. Yeah, we usually like categorize someone's age by their birthday. So it's like, how would the Martian year affect how we categorize people's ages? You know, uh,
I mean, I don't know. I feel like I don't know. Star Wars is sort of tricky on this topic. Not tricky, and that Coruscant is like the one where I think it's how they base their calendar off of, and it just so happens to have
Yeah.
a 365-day uh,
No,
year, and
Okay.
George Lucas was like, I can't make it exactly like Earth, so I'm gonna make it 368 days, guys. Totally different.
Yeah.
oh,
I
that's ever
know
so
in
infuriating.
Star Wars lore, Coruscant is like where all the humans come from.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it probably is why it's the most similar to Earth.
Yep, and of course the humans are everywhere because apparently we were the first species that could really actually explore
Yeah.
places.
This
I
is like the humans are pretty much willing to live anywhere. That's why they're in space.
Yep.
I mean, let's see. I don't know if this is like some weird conspiracy or fan theory, or if this was actually a thing in the old lore, but I heard this is back when I was like into like really into Star Wars, that that humans got into the Star Wars universe because they were forced off of Earth, and then they went through by a robot takeover, and
Oh
then
yeah.
they found accidentally went through a time travel teleport thing, and then ended up in the Star Wars universe, and then somehow discovered the Force. I don't know. I don't
No,
know the rest of the story,
I
but
Basically, weird time nonsense. I think it is a theory. I think it's kind of like it was in a Legends book, but that's no longer canon.
yeah.
no, it was
It's kind of
purposely
like
like it was even back in the day a non-canonical work. Like it was meant to
ah,
just be purely um uh like even fictitious to the Star Wars universe.
yeah.
I forget the exact name
Usually
of the work.
Um,
how Lucasfilms would do their stuff is that they would produce so much stuff that it didn't really matter what was canon, and they would just decanonize stuff that people
N-
didn't like.
No, it was the well, everything had to still make it past George Lucas's desk. There was still
Oh
continuity
yeah,
that
I
he
know,
wanted to
I
maintain.
know. It's like I remember there's a trading card game, and they rejected a card that had a bunch of Yoda's species on it because
Hmm.
it's like they wanted to keep Yoda's species as secretive as possible.
Yeah. But it was the author of the Republic Commando novels when she did an interview. She essentially laid out the entire like how Star Wars published so many books with so many different writers and still maintained somewhat of consistency. It's
Mhm.
surprising how consistent the different authors were, even if they were writing at the same time. Because essentially
Yeah.
George Lucas was always on them and making sure that they are keeping consistency, making sure that there's no authors that are contradicting each other.
Mhm.
So
He
essentially,
was
like how what was his face? What was that main German general in the West that survived the war? He essentially made sure all the German generals' accounts basically cast all the blame off themselves and put it onto Hitler and the generals that were either dead or in Soviet captivity, and made sure all the blame rested on them, and made sure that
Mhm.
they never did anything wrong.
Hmm.
Like Manstein.
Mhm.
Um, Yeah, I could see. Yeah, I think it was von Manstein that did lead that calls, but also like Durnit, like Admiral Durnitz as well. Like he wasn't even in that Strasse since he was Kriegsmarine, but even then you saw him blaming Hitler. But like from a
Well, it's very stupid.
he wasn't really following the narrative that the army generals were the hair. Um, uh, he more followed his own narrative, so. And maybe there was a kernel of truth to what they
Yeah.
were saying. In all honesty,
Yeah. I don't know. It
I
just seems sort
gotta
of sus that. Oh.
I gotta admit I don't really know much about post World War II Germany, so I'm not gonna make any comments about it.
Oh. Well.
it,
I think. Well, I guess I'll just say. So after World War II, obviously the Soviets weren't going to talk to us about what their experience on World War II, because why would you give us information if another war seemed likely? I mean, we didn't tell them about things like the Ghost Army or anything. So all we had to go off of for the war on the Eastern Front and how it played out was the German generals and I guess any paperwork that we had. Not sure how much of the paperwork we had access to. And so essentially what happened, or at least what we think happened, was the surviving German generals that were in the West, they all like got together and their memoirs essentially made sure that this is how we got things like the clean Wehrmacht idea or whatever. That I mean, like obviously, I'm sure most of the German Wehrmacht obviously weren't a bunch of war criminals, but you know, there were some war crimes they were involved with. But essentially, all the blame for all the tactical and strategic decisions, anything that was wrong, was put onto Hitler, and the surviving general, or maybe even some of the generals that were like dead or whatever, were in Soviet hands. And then all the surviving generals, clearly they did nothing wrong, even if their decisions would have been stupid. Like, you know, Manstein basically proposed, you know, it's a joke, but there's some truth to it, that he wanted just to retreat to Berlin to win the war. Because
I mean, it was somewhat sound to actually retreat to Berlin because they had the Elbe River, but that was a big natural barrier, that was easily defendable if they would have retreated in 44. But of course, then you're also surrendering East Prussia, which is, unless you evacuate the entire population, which was highly unlikely, the Germans knew what the Soviets would have done with the Germans there, which they did end up doing in our own history, which is tragic. This is why, like, honestly, like, I can somewhat believe the German narrative that they were defending Europe against the Soviet tide, against the barbarians to the east, because generally there was a barbarian tinge to how the Soviets governed their own men.
Yeah, the Soviets did not really care about the Geneva Convention either.
Well, they didn't sign it, and that's why there were so many war crimes on the Eastern Front, was because the Germans were signatories, but they don't have to abide a non-signatory member. That's why they, I mean, that's why they didn't have to treat Soviet prisoners of war actually with decency, but they would treat American, British, and French with decency because they were all Geneva Convention signers, and the Germans expected it in turn, for their POWs, and we did treat their prisoners of war with respect because we were all Geneva Convention signatories. That's why technically, if a partisan attacks you, you have the right to, like, if you take him captive, execute him, because he's a non-traditional combatant. He's a non-state actor, and he's a civilian that takes up arms to fight you, so he falls outside of the Geneva Convention, even if he's a citizen of a nation that is a signatory, because he's not a uniformed soldier of that nation. Yeah, that's why partisan. That's why there wasn't actually a whole lot of partisan activity in France, because the French knew that that'd be the case. It's like, our soldiers are protected, but we're not. If we rise up, we are fair game.
They were technically not stupid.
Yeah. Also, many of the French did not actually want to resist the Germans, unlike the narrative that we try to pump up in the West, that, oh, everybody was just ready to rise up against the Germans. It's like, there's technically only 60,000 French resistance members. There's not that many.
And something I kind of learned after my I'm pretty young relatively, but something I've kind of learned younger is that a lot of people do not care at all.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
As long as you keep them fed, the average plebeian will not care what flag is flying at the end of the day.
And also, it seemed like at least from my understanding from Charles Column's Puritan's Empire, that that when Vichy France was originally established and Vichy France was still like independent, like actually, and they had control over their own affairs, they were appointing a lot of more like conservative-minded people, and then progressively, leading up to the Germans essentially just getting rid of Vichy France, they started to insist that they replace the more conservative Catholic members of government with with basically a bunch of socialists and whatnot, because they share the same economic policy as the Nazis and were more, I guess, sort of similar to the Nazis ideologically.
Honestly, I don't really know why they didn't just like install former members of the French fascist party before it was banned.
I mean,
Actually, Pétain did. When he did run his own affairs, he did have some members from the French fascists there. But
The
that's because
former
he was trying.
one, since it was, banned.
Yeah, he was trying to create a new national, like essentially what Franco was, where he was trying to create like this coalition of all the different elements of what's generally considered the right, even though fascists are not right wing, they're third positionists, but they still kind of
Yeah,
align
it's
more with
like
the nationalists.
they kind of are still like a modern ideology or modernist ideology.
Oh yeah, that's why like they consider themselves social revolutionaries, even though like they are still tacitly nationalistic. And that's why they get
Yeah,
lumped in with the right wing all the time.
I swear it's like whereas like whenever like someone in fiction bases their villains on the Nazis or anything similar, is like if you don't actually understand them, you just end up creating your own thing by
It's a
accident.
it's a caricature, which that's why like I actually learned this from like rereading my old writing. That I would make caricatures when I was a younger, less experienced writer, but now that I'm getting onto my second draft in an alternate history series I'm working on, like once you get to the second draft, you stop making caricatures and you actually start making characters. That actually are true human beings within your universe,
Yeah.
unless you're just an awful writer. Which there are those writers, which I say Hollywood is made up of them.
But basically, it's kind of like in Hollywood, it's less important that you're a writer and more important that you know how to deal with people. So it's like
It-
the people in Hollywood, they're people, but they're not really good at the actual stuff that they do.
well, are you ideologically aligned with the regime? Essentially, will you pump out the stuff that is kosher for the ideology that they
Yeah.
want to perpetuate? Um, which I find
Whereas
it
like
funny because
I
go
think
ahead.
sometimes it's not really like a specific, whereas like I don't think that they're consciously producing an ideology. I think it's kind of like they either subscribe to the ideology or pretend to, because they want to feel accepted. So it's kind of like they don't really want to stick out their necks.
Craig did it again. He wrecked our day, and he's not getting paid,
For
and it's
shame.
just this way. Anyways, so yeah, once again, Craig has decided to renew his issues that I thought were solved. So gamer Confucius was in the middle of Le Point, so I will let him get back to Le Point, and then we will carry on with the discussion we were talking about while I was trying to get this audio downloaded to figure out where we cut out in the first place. So, Mr. Gamer.
All right, I'll keep it to 10 words. Or at least I'll try to. Uh, People don't want to challenge the status quo because they'll get noticed and get less opportunities to continue working there. That's it.
Mm-hmm. And and like I was going to make a statement on that is these people have a fundamental worldview that they were raised that they I don't know if they were raised in it, but they came to believe it, which is fundamentally the American egalitarian worldview. Um, uh, and because of that, like they see anything that transgre- transgresses against the worldview as something evil. And that's pretty much everything that is on the right. So they see everything that is neat, orderly, and nice in the world, aka their own worldview, as the default. And anything that goes against it is something subversive and evil. So that's why they always portray characters, like specifically the antagonists, as fulfilling these traits. That's why Sidious is like, well, he's anti-democracy. He is anti. He's a monarch. He is into bad stuff. Things that go against liberties, and the rebels are fighting for liberties instead of Sidious's preferredness of having order and stability. Which you can't have that if people don't have liberties, yada yada. So they unintentionally like write the most based right wing stuff into the villains a lot of the times. Especially like people like Sidious, where it's like, oh yeah, I dissolve the parliament. I rule as an absolute monarch. This
Yeah.
galaxy is stable because of that, and there's very low crime. Like I'd really love to see the crime statistics of the Galactic Empire compared to the Republic.
I know in the Clone Wars they had a large problem with smuggling.
Oh yeah, they did, and that's why I would just love to see like the statistics if Star Wars had it. It's like, oh, the crime during the Galactic Empire, crime during the Galactic Republic.
It went down, but at what cost?
But at what cost? Oh, so some people were put into prison camps because they were dissidents. Oh, I think I could tolerate a few thousand people disappearing for an overall stable society.
And also, what about the
Oh,
nice
no,
Empire bailing out the company that made the mouse droids by just buying
Yeah.
a bunch of mouse droids?
Mhm.
Oh no, guys, what are we gonna do without our insanely corrupt Galactic Senate?
Yep. What are we gonna do without parliamentary democracy bringing things to a stall, allowing planets to be invaded by other powers instead of having a centralized military body? Oh, what are we gonna do, guys?
Well, actually, this is something I
I
want to
know
get
what we can
your.
do. We need to let the corporations vote.
Yep.
And then the Empire just nationalizes all the corporations that don't do the bidding of the government.
Based.
But anyways,
I'm also anti-capitalistic, so
yeah. Well, at any rate, so this is the thing, right? What do you think about the Moffs? Because they're not. Because I mean, obviously, the Empire wasn't around long enough I mean, but do you think that if Lucas was more pro-imperial and the Empire, uh, won,
well, the
do you think the
Moffs.
Moffs would have become a hereditary title? Is what I'm trying to get.
I mean, Moff is essentially their version of a duke, like in the Roman Empire or duce. Uh, where essentially that just means the leader, which was their military governor. So possibly, but it would probably have to take like the Galactic Empire falls into ruin, and you have all these smaller kingdoms come out of it, and the Moffs are the dukes. The Moff or whatever the Moff title would be, like, oh yeah, I'm a Moff, and my son's a prince, and he's the heir presumptive of the Moff
Yeah,
Moffdom.
he'll be a larvae.
Yeah. Until he receives the title of Moff over the Moffdom, he'll be the viceroy of this one world. I could easily
Oh
I
no.
could see that.
Yeah.
I
Well,
can't imagine what Rey Palpatine and her reign would be like. I can't
Well,
imagine that.
I think she would run the empire into ruins, in all honesty. That's just my, because she's too emotional. Like she's not meant to be. She's a peasant LARPing as a
Yeah.
Jedi.
She also almost killed her friends on multiple occasions.
Yep, because
I
incompetence.
I I really what was I gonna say? I have episodes 7 and 8 on DVD disc. My family bought those, but we never bothered to buy episode 9. It's like I saw it once, and
I
it was
still haven't seen
pretty.
it.
It
Once
was
is enough.
visually. I liked it visually. Like they went on this planet where it's snowing, and people like I don't people say that they don't like the rain or whatever, but heavy rain and heavy snow I love the look of, or just snowfall in general. But anyways, so yeah, so lovely weather. So it was a visually pretty movie, and the whole Endor
Oh yeah.
planet thing. It was visually pretty, but it wasn't. It made no sense. Like a whole bunch of spoiler alert. You don't mind if I spoil it for you, do you?
Oh no, I really don't care.
So somehow, the Galactic Empire managed Palpatine or whatever as a contingency plan or something, built this massive fleet of Star Destroyers at the massive end of the universe or the galaxy that no one knew about, even though it would have been pretty clear to look at like the logs of numbers of Star Destroyers built and seen, wait a minute, there's like 40, 50, 60, however many of these Star Destroyers that we don't have an account of what happened to them. So maybe so something's going on here, because you can't just build massive, essentially what are the equivalent of battleships or aircraft carriers, and have have somebody not notice that like a whole lot of them have just gone missing. Like somebody would have noticed.
I mean, that there are a lot of accounts of during wartime just massive things disappearing and then reappearing later, like all those Yugoslav hand grenades during the Yugoslav wars, just they disappeared and then they found their way into London street gangs, guys.
Oh.
In Sweden.
Yeah, and Sweden too.
Yeah.
Which that's why I expect like this, like
Oh,
not
I
to
remember.
not to
I
get into
saw
the
of
Ukraine war, but if Ukraine collapses, I can expect all those arms that were handed out to civilians finding their way to London street gangs or Sweden
but they
too.
banned
Oh,
guns.
no.
Come on, guys. There's no way that you could get your hands on something if the government made it illegal.
What?
Yeah.
What? You really think people would just break the law like that?
I
People
mean,
already breaking the law, break the law again? Who knew?
obviously, I know we had to institute the ban on gun laws because, people were breaking the other law that says you can't murder people, but that doesn't mean that they're going to break this law.
Okay, what if we made murdering people double illegal?
Oh, that will just solve it, guys. Totally. It's not like we need a secret police to hunt them down and solve the problem. Unlike us just twiddling our thumbs like our governments are doing.
Secret police secret police under monarchies have a better track record than secret police under democracies. I'm just gonna say that.
Yep. Like I forget what the Tsar's secret police was, but it was so effective that guess where the Soviets took their inspiration from for the Cheka, NKVD, and then eventually KGB.
Yeah. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they were just like the same people, but just like, yeah, we're totally in favor of the new regime right now. Please don't kill us.
That there were some, but for the most part, like the military and police institutions of the Russian Empire were fairly on the white side. It was mostly like the conscript soldiers that were in the territorial regiments that were like the only disloyal ones to the Tsar.
Yeah.
And then he had Kolchak, the admiral, deciding to try his hand at being a general, which
Yay!
I approve.
If only you did.
Desperate
If only
times call for
Russia
desperate
restored
measures.
the Tsar.
Yes.
Only the Baron Erngern von Sternberg was effective. He should have led the whites to victory with his esoteric Eurasian monarchism.
Just like imagine he like rescues the Tsar and he's like, I'd like to talk to you about my fringe ideology.
And the Tsar's like, I mean, I'm listening. I've been surrounded by people with a fringe ideology for a while. I mean, why not?
Imagine Tsar Nicholas like, yes, I am a Tsar of Russia and Khan of Mongolia.
Hello, Mongolians. I would like to, I would like to be a weeb, but for Mongolia.
No, I mean it's not. I mean it's not any different than. It's not any different than what was it like the Qing? They weren't, or was it the Manchu or whatever? They weren't actually Chinese. They were like Mongolian import. The Manchus, they were Mongolian import. So I mean, you might as well have the Mongolian ruling family be Russians.
Yeah,
and then the Russian ruling family be Poles, and then the Poles ruling family be Germans, and then the German ruling family be French, and then the French. Okay. Anyways,
Yep.
I mean,
Just like no one that speaks the same language as the native country or is like has the same heritage just rules over them.
like most of the nobility in France, like up to the French Revolution, were all ethnic
Austrian.
Germans. But yeah,
Yeah.
mostly from Frankfurt,
Austria.
which that's
Wait,
no.
wait,
Well,
really? I think
that was because of
you're
the
I
early.
think
Well, that was because the early
okay.
like conquest by the Franks. That's where it got the name of Frankia back in the day. Was because it was literally the Germanic Franks conquered the land that would become France, subjugated the native like ethnic French
Gauls.
population, and
Actually, was it the Gauls or were there Romans living there? Or Romans
they
mixed with Gauls?
there were more Romans mixed with Gauls there, but more leaning towards the ethnic Roman side than the Gaul side. But they essentially had formed their own ethnic group out of a mixture
Yep.
between Gaulish and Latins. But then the
Yeah,
Germans come in
I
like
think
now we are your nobility, guys.
I mean,
I
okay,
think
why not?
I've heard of Gaullist nationalism from French, no, from some French people I know. I don't really know what it is.
It
That
has to like without looking too much into it. It just has to be LARPing because like
it, it
Yeah,
is.
probably.
Gauls don't exist anymore. Like the ancient races or ethnicities that existed don't exist anymore. Like there's like
Ah,
like the Britons don't really exist. Like the Britons that like Caesar briefly encountered a couple times when he tried to take over the joint. They don't exist anymore because they mixed with the
you know
Latins and
what?
then they mixed with the Norwegians or whatever, and then
And then
The
Normans.
recorded wear nationalism.
uh, it's like
Oh god.
I mean, it'd be like me trying to claim I'm a Latin. It'd be like me trying to claim I'm a um shoot. It'd be like me trying to claim I'd be a Gaelic
It's,
nationalist, even though I'm only like part Gaelic. It's like most of my ancestors are like anything but.
Mhm.
it's like a
Well, not
white
really.
Instagram girl when she finds out that she's 2% when she's 2% Italian.
uh,
I've just
And she's not even
uh,
Southern Italian. She's just like Venetian.
honestly, DNA tests have been a ruin for the American population. Just saying, because people like get the idea that's like, well,
the
okay, I was
DNA
raised as
tests and their consequences have been a disaster for the American people.
for the American race.
I mean, well, actually, I mean that's more of another thing. Like, eventually, like hundreds from years from now, will there actually be like a distinct American ethnicity where we all sort of like where like Americans in general share like similar like facial features or whatever?
I
Like,
think
Yeah,
honestly,
probably.
like it depends. It depends if we keep on going down our stupid egalitarian route. If we remain egalitarians, I could see that. But if we go back to return to tradition, we will have the different castes reassert themselves again, and the different castes will probably breed within each other, and then you'll see different ethnic groups from different castes, kind of like what you see in every civilization, where you see a different distinct ethnic features from different castes of the population. It's just what happens in most societies. Like India is the most stark example of it, but you can see it in Europe too. Like in India, literally they are all different ethnicities at this point because they just haven't bred between the different castes. It's so taboo. But then Europe, it's a bit more fluid, but still, typically the aristocracy were of different ethnic stock than the unlanded, unwashed masses. That the unwashed masses would be the ones that are more ethnically homogenous to each other.
Mm.
well,
So,
um, this has been a fun episode about reviews that somehow we
oh,
managed to get serious, and then Star Wars, and then serious, and then
Oh, I also wanted to bring up another point about Star
Instagram
Wars.
white girls.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
and
look.
Instagram white
Let's
girls.
just say that with my timestamps, after my last timestamp, like barring whatever I had to like remove or whatever, the last timestamp I made was like 1 hour 40. I'm probably not going to go through and try to come up with things. I'll just say a whole lot of random stuff that blended into one thing.
You
Yeah.
should probably just go on like a random tirade about something. I don't know. I don't care.
Yes, random tirade section number 1, random tirade section number 2. Darth Vader is a monarchist and wanted Luke to be his prince of the
Yeah.
Empire.
Instagram white girls.
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Hornby, the British model railroading company?
No.
I
You ever
thought not.
heard?
It's
Have
not
you
a
ever
story
heard of the?
Bachman
It's
would
an
tell you.
English legend.
It's not a story
Have
Bachman
you
would
ever
tell you.
heard of the
It's an English
tragedy
legend.
of? Have you ever heard of the tragedy of the private railroad company? Oh wait, no, private subway company.
No.
It's a London legend.
There was a private subway. There was a private subway in the London Underground.
I bet there was.
No, there was a private subway in like New York, and it's like ever since they like nationalized it, it went to garbage because no one actually cares anymore.
Yeah.
Like they
Seems
just let people
legit.
just hop the turnstiles.
Seems legit, but what is the proper term when like it's not like when like when a non-national government takes over, because it's not nationalizing it,
Yeah.
is it like cityatizing it? Is
I
cityatize a
guess
word? Cityatize the means of
cityatized.
production.
Publicizing it, I would say.
Cityatized.
Publicize
It's
the
like
means of production. Everyone should know how to
imagine if
make
like
tools.
imagine in like your small town, just like the mayor gets elected, is just like goes down to the local pub, is like, I have cityatized this pub, I own it now.
May, are you
No,
drunk?
the city owns the bar now.
Cheap liquor for everyone.
I mean the city. I mean the city owns it, and basically you give all your beer to me for free.
No, it must be distributed evenly amongst the populace of the
Myself.
city.
Cityatize the means of alcoholism. Cityatize.
I'm gonna cityatize the bar so I can distribute all the alcohol equally to myself.
Look, okay. In
Mhm.
days past, everybody in society was effectively a functioning alcoholic because of the water. Why can't it be that way again?
So, like, I think there's a really interesting video. Just like, have you ever seen Oversimplified? Basically,
Yes,
he goes into like the prohibition. Like that's actually how American culture used to be.
because we're Puritans, and
Yep.
well,
Yes.
I'm not, but American culture is basically puritanical, so it has to be on some moral crusade, even if what they're campaigning against isn't morally evil. But they had to feel like, but American culture has to feel like it's going against some great evil, even if there's a bigger evil to go against.
It's always
Yeah,
proselytizing.
honestly, I kind of feel that. It's kind of weird how like certain mentalities like carry across, even if it's like I don't know, it's just like even like the non-religious people and the Puritan derived culture, even though they're not religious, they still have like the same Puritan zeal for like moral crusades.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just because like what the Puritans left us. It's like interesting. Like Charles Cullen went into this. It's like and it was like the Puritans, like they wanted to get rid of Christmas. Like that's why they banned Christmas in the colonies like that they ran. So but like because the Puritan attitude, like the Puritans couldn't like directly take out Christmas, like the Puritan attitude just like spirit just decided to destroy it by like essentially turning it away from being a religious holiday, which Christ Mass, and turning it into a and turning it into like this like teach it like this, like essentially like expression of consumerism that doesn't have any actual meaning in our culture. So you have like this panel
Yeah.
of people discussing the true meaning of Christmas, and it consists of a Unitarian, an atheist, uh, a rabbi, basically all the kinds of people that don't actually know anything what Christmas is actually about, and they're like trying to come up with the meaning of Christmas, and it's a
It's like they're
season.
they're trying to post hoc rationalize this holiday that everyone still likes to celebrate.
Yeah, I mean it's like, as a Catholic, you know, uh, it's like it's now my normalized American, whatever, growing up with secular Christmas, part of me is like, yeah, if you want
Hmm.
to have a Christmas tree or whatnot, whatever. But
Yeah,
but
I
now
think
oh, what?
honestly Christmas trees are fine.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, but then the more like explicitly Catholic part of me is like, what are you doing celebrating a holiday called Christmas if you're not, if you like don't, if you're not actually celebrating what Christmas is like about, which is
Yeah, it's
like,
supposed to be.
yeah, like this, like celebrating this like remarkable,
Yeah.
like this, like one of the most remarkable moments in human history, where
Yeah.
um,
They took Christ out of Christmas.
well, they took the mass
That's what
out of it too.
well, that too,
So
but
there's
Yeah.
it's literally nothing now.
it
There's
Yeah.
is well, which that's why they're so easy to say happy holidays or Xmas and stuff, because they want to disassociate Christ from that day as much as possible, and instead get you hooked on consuming
consumerism.
products and buying gifts and stuff. Although I find it funny
Yeah.
because like it the only way that I kind of see it like somewhat, I don't see it as disingenuous is when I see the Japanese honestly do that, but they treat it more like their Valentine's Day. That's what Christmas is to them because they don't understand
Yeah.
that. Well, except for the
Japan
cat.
religiously is a very weird place.
Well,
They
technically,
simultaneously are Shinto and Buddhist. They don't really see them as like
well,
contradictory religions.
well, they're not like if
Yeah.
you go on fundamentally because the Shinto, of course, is an animist, a polytheistic religion. So essentially,
Yeah.
there can be infinite amount of gods because every single ancestor, when they
Yeah.
die, they become part of the spiritual realm. So essentially, they become
Yeah, I
a
think
spiritual entity.
Hawaii Shinto has actually made like George Washington a god.
Oh yeah,
Um,
Jesus is technically
yeah.
a god in Shinto too. Um, and that's why the Japanese will claim that Jesus secretly came back to Japan.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I think that's just one village.
Yeah,
yeah, we
I,
need
I,
to get the Jesuits back in fighting shape to come in and make
well,
sure the
well,
Japanese stop that.
if Harry Truman didn't deliberately nuke Nagasaki, which was the center of Catholicism, and if you like to connect dots, Harry S. Truman was a high level Freemason as well. So
Didn't he also like
suspicious.
join the Klan? Apparently, he tried to get out of it or whatever. But didn't he join? Or maybe it was someone else. Didn't he like join the Klan briefly?
He,
Which is
he's from
also
Hmm.
he's from Missouri, so I wouldn't doubt if he was actually a member of the Klan.
yeah. Apparently,
I
apparently
think it
only
sounds like in that time period it was really popular.
Oh,
yeah,
in Missouri today, it still is popular. So,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Like I don't know, it's kind of like I heard there's only around like 5,000 members in total, but
officially,
that's
officially.
officially.
yeah. The
Ah,
Klan. What's
it's
weird about the Klan
complicated.
too? I mean, like the Klan apparently, from my understanding, and it's not like I've done a lot of like historical research on the Klan for whatever, but but from my understanding, like the first incarnation of the Klan was essentially just trying to terrorize blacks into not voting, and also trying to like work out the
Mm.
anger that the Southerns felt after the Civil War because it felt like the Union was just like running the show and only letting you know. Uh, the blacks vote, which was like the exact opposite of what was happening before the Civil War ended, and then the first incarnation of the Klan just like died away after Jim Crow laws were instituted because there was no point. And then the second
Yeah.
incarnation of the Klan was the one that is more what we know today, when they went after not just blacks but also like basically anyone who wasn't WASP, So they went after like the
Yeah.
Catholics and the Jews. But that incarnation of the clan's the weird one because, and I guess the current one because like the outfit that the clan used was essentially just a white version of like Spanish penitential, like Catholic Spanish
Oh yeah,
penitential garb.
I think it's like one of the problems is just like tourists going to Spain and they don't know what it is and they just like panic
Well,
because
yeah,
they think it's
but it's
yeah.
like you think if you wanted this incarnation of the clan to be anti-Catholic, you would go you would maybe change the outfit a little bit.
I mean
Yeah,
they are Southern plebs, so I wouldn't expect them to actually understand that.
that's
Yeah,
like
but who
me saying,
introduced
"Oh
the
yeah,
outfit in the first place? That's the real question. Like, how did they come across this out? I mean, it looks cool. Don't get me wrong. Like when it's actually like Spanish it's proper like colors in the Spanish penitential garb. It looks really cool. Like, but
it's
where
like
did they
it
get
has a
it?
point."
Um, let's see.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's see. Do we have any other main things to say before we wrap up in prayer and outro?
Um, I
I got
well,
a few more duds that I could tell if you want.
I have something on the clan before we fully seal that topic. Well,
Okay.
I had a friend who was raised in the South, but he's not a traditional WASP, but he was essentially enamored by the clan because he thought like, oh, it's just Southern pride, it's just this and that, and I was just like, I was like, Bud, it's he was a Lutheran too. I was like,
Yeah.
but he was sympathetic to Catholicism too, which that's why I was so easily able to convert him from Lutheranism to Catholicism now.
Based.
He was a shill for the clan. I was like, you know why they burn the cross, right? And he says, well, it's for spiritual rebirth and all that stuff. And I'm like, no, it's because they would light the cross in front of Irishmen's houses because they were Catholic. They'd purposely desecrate the cross because they thought us to be idolaters and other reasons too. They also tarred and feathered Catholics too. A lot of Catholics died at the hands of the clan when he was like, and he had to look it up too. Like he spent like a full day researching it. And he's like, oh my god, I did not know that happened. And I was like, yeah, you shouldn't really be
Oh.
a friend. You shouldn't be a friend of the clan. And totally like flipped his worldview because he thought that he never conceived of them persecuting Catholics. I'm like, yeah, they're a bunch of low church Protestants, and he hates low church Protestants too. So I was like, hey,
Mm.
yeah, you get it now. You get it.
All
Yeah.
right.
The
Um.
clan bad guys.
Yeah. Just don't go around killing folk. And also maybe stop being Protestant and
Yep. Stop being
stuff.
Protestant too is also the moral of the story. Protestants are cringe.
If you adopt the Catholic world, if everybody adopted a Catholic worldview, there'd be no need for racial conflict. Everyone would, I mean, obviously there's still going to be sin or whatever, but everybody would generally be getting along. It's going to be great. There's no need to be, you
Mm.
know, just, just,
Yep.
just, just stop. Okay.
I don't
Anyway,
know. It's I guess the one thought I had about the Catholic Church is kind of negative. They're kind of a little bit too easily corruptible, with Pope Francis and all.
w-
And Protestantism.
Oh,
well,
it's
I
so much
mean,
more.
I,
I mean that there is individual corruption, but we still have the traditions and the sacraments given to us by the apostles.
Mhm.
We
It's
we
like
still are
it doesn't matter if like the corruption is still there. It's
like
like even
because
eventually the
man
corrupt people will die. The
yeah.
yes.
traditions will remain.
Yeah, so I mean, there like a lot of people don't think of Pope Francis as a good pope, and who knows, maybe we'll wake up tomorrow and Pope Francis starts doing all this stuff, and he's around
Yeah,
for 10 more
yeah,
years, and he goes down in history
he
as one of
he
the greatest
occasionally
popes. But
he occasionally has a good take, such as like some people replace their dogs with children, and that's kind of cringe.
yeah,
Hmm.
but I mean, like there have been a lot of popes that were kind of bad, but a lot of like the worst popes, like
Is so
ended up
much more
too.
worse.
Huh?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of
So
them
much
ended
of
up.
the
What?
Okay, so much of the worst popes were the
The Medici popes were
Oh,
they were some of the worst popes, but like honestly, like I say, Francis will probably go down as like an inconsequential pope in my
yeah.
opinion.
Well,
He
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sorry for interrupting. What I was gonna say is that a lot of the bad popes, apparently they did like something on accident that ended up having a lot of good ramifications. I can't remember which pope it was, but he was the guy who signed off on creating the Abbey at Cluny, where a lot of really good saints came out of. Well, I mean, all saints are good because they're in heaven, but like a lot of like very important saints came out of. I think even a couple of like popes came out of the Cluny, which was established by Irish monks, but it was in Austria, I want to say, or somewhere. That's that's just how it rolled. Once Ireland was converted, they the Irish went everywhere. Um,
Mm.
but anyways, apparently, like there was a Irish monastery in like parts of like Scotland or whatever that was around for a while. Yeah, I don't know. But anyways, so uh yeah, but anyways, so I don't know, maybe Pope Francis will make his mark on history. Maybe the consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart, maybe he was the one who got it right. Uh because other popes that tried to do it, they either didn't they clearly didn't do it right because like I think it was Pope Saint John Paul II. I still don't know why it's not Saint Pope John Paul II, but whatever. Anyways, he he consecrated the world, but didn't specify Russia by name. So uh, but also, guys, you got to do the first Saturday devotions. Everyone forgets that. Do the first Saturday devotions.
yes.
Well, it's getting pretty late where I
Yeah.
am, and
Oh yeah.
my
So
phone battery is
we'll wrap
running
up.
pretty low.
Okay. Okay.
Oh
We'll
yeah.
wrap up.
Oh no, you don't have to
No,
wrap
yeah,
up.
but
I'm
trust
just
me,
gonna leave early.
I'm not built to be
Um,
around at past 11 o'clock.
Aaron,
Mm-mm.
uh,
All
Well,
right.
I guess I'll go. See you guys next week.
Maybe.
all
Okay.
right,
Take care. God bless. Bye.
Maybe.
all
Mm.
right. Well, I think I can actually end us in prayer. I don't know when Saint Michael the Archangel's feast day is, but I do like he's my personal saint of devotion. So, if you mind.
No, I mean, I'll plug the prayer and outro. I mean, I'll plug the social media thingies. Dark Lahoon's channel obviously is going to be in the video description if I remember. Check out our other social medias if I didn't list all of them in the description box below. So yeah, I guess I'll let Darth lead us in the Saint Michael prayer.
All right. In nomine Patre et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl throughout the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen.
Amen.
In nomine Patre et Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.